Okay, hey guys, this is Reverend Sean of the Center Path, and today we're going to go over something called being self-ordained. Okay, so being self-ordained is not a thing. You can't be self-ordained as a monk or a nun or any other kind of monastic. Okay, hey guys, this is Reverend Sean of the Centered Path, and we're going to go over something I've been working on for a while, and it's been bugging me for a long time, and it's the question, actually this is the question that I actually sent to about 120 monks, nuns, and Buddhist leaders, and Dharma teachers, and stuff like that throughout the world, and I got about 105, 110 responses. We're going to go after that. Here's the question. What is your opinion of monks or nuns being self-ordained? Is there such a thing in your knowledge? So let's go over it. I have spent a long time in Buddhism as a practitioner, as a studier, if that's even a word, and as a Buddhist minister in the Chan tradition, actually. So, which is like Zen tradition, basically, which is, but we kind of go back to some of the Theravada, the older teachings, because those have a little bit less of the dogmatic and the very religious aspects, and so therefore you could probably call it a little bit secular, which we'll go over a whole other video on that stuff, which I find really interesting. So we'll do that later too. Maybe if I do it, I'll put a thing up here. Now, I put that question, what do you think basically about being self-ordained? Because over the past few years, and working at the temples, and working with other monks and nuns and Dharma teachers and all the jazz that I've done over the past 15 years, is you start seeing people who claim they're self-ordained, or they've already achieved enlightenment, which is a whole other bag of chips that we'll have to get into. Now, there's a lot of warnings with all of this stuff. Now, I ended up getting a book. It's this one here. It's called Buddhist Self-Ordination, The Dharma Strategy for the West by Alexander Duncan. I think it's a neat little book. It's only about, what is it? 60 pages, 59, yeah, 60 pages. It's a little bit better explanation of secular Buddhism in the West than it would be being self-ordained, because there's really nothing in here that talks about being self-ordained other than Mahasiddhas, which are not Buddhists. And it talks about some of the first Western Buddhists, which were ordained, and being ordained is a process. So the actual term to be ordained is to be brought into an order. So there has to be an order to be brought into. And people say, well, the Buddha wasn't ordained. He started the order. So it was after that you would ordain people into that order. So, yeah, maybe he was, but you're not a Buddha, so you didn't get there. Or maybe you think you are. I don't know. A lot of people think they are. That's kind of a sociopathic, narcissistic kind of thing. And we see that these days in some of the traditions with people. And that's where people get into trouble, by being bamboozled and swindled and subjugated and abused by these charlatans. And we got to watch out for those kind of things. So when I put this question to the people, a lot of my friends, I got back, like I said, about 95%, 90% of the questions that I asked out, I did get a response. And there's some really influential people that we've seen, and a lot of authors and a lot of people who are very, very studied in the Dharma. And 95%, actually, I'll look at the list of everybody that I put through here. The results were about 95% said there was no such thing. And there isn't such a thing, because in order to be ordained, you have to first become what's called a samanera, which you shave your head like this, and you get rid of your belongings, you get some robes, and then you go through a little process, kind of like a training, and then you become ordained as a bhikkhu, or a bhikshu, or a bhikkhuni, or a bhikshuni, whatever, male or female. And that there's a process, and there's a vetting process. Make sure you want to be doing this, and there has to be, usually, in some traditions anyway, 3 masters, some traditions 10 masters, but there has to be 10 monks or other people of the order already there. When I went through my ordination process, we had 3 masters and I think between 10 and 15 monks and nuns from different traditions as well. So we had some Theravada and some Mahayana, and there was no Vajrayana, but we'll get into that later. And the problem with it is people who say that they're self-ordained haven't gone through a process. Now, they may be well-educated, and they may be well-read, and they may be well-intended, but they're not ordained. And that's an important thing. So if someone says they're ordained, start checking on credentials. One of the things that happened to me when I first came out to Colorado, I came from California and spent some time in Asia, Thailand and Vietnam and Sri Lanka and Japan, stuff like that. And when I came back here to the United States, remember, I was a minister. I'm not a monk. I'm a minister. It's different. I'm a lay minister, right? So I can have a job. I have to have a job. So I have to have a way to support myself, which is through my office, which I'm a healthcare provider. And I have a family, and I have pets, and I have a house, and I have a car, and I have these things that I have to deal with, which are a little bit different than if I was a monk. Then I'd be living at a temple or living by myself, completely celibate, and following those 200 some odd rules, or at least the 14. Which I've gone over the precepts. Okay, so you take different precepts as your ordination process. You take just the 5 precepts if you're just a lay Buddhist, and then you can take a few more if you're getting a little deeper into it. And you take more if you become a minister, and you take far more if you become a monk. Now, you can follow those in your own way, kind of, but there's not much leeway in them, and I've gone over some of the explanation of that. We can go over the Eightfold Path, the five precepts, and things like that. So the process of being ordained is very specific. And this is for all groups, man. I went through and I asked Vajrayana, so Nyingma and Gelug and Shakya, and these are the different lineages of Vajrayana that I actually asked either Rinpoche or Lamas, and they said there's no such thing. There's no way. Even Dzogchen. Dzogchen is a very secret person to person. I mean, there's some talk now about the Dalai Lama doing some stuff with other people online and giving empowerments online, but that's a little bit different than other Buddhist traditions, right? I mean, you have to start looking at that kind of thing if you want to really get into Buddhism, what tradition you're going to follow, and compare it to other traditions, because you're going to see a lot of weird stuff that's not going to make any sense from one tradition to another sometimes, okay? We'll get into that later. But in the process of becoming ordained, you have to have those people there that certify that you're ordained. And usually you end up with some kind of certificate. It shows your lineage and this kind of thing. And when I came to Colorado, I was trying to outreach and look with a lot of different Buddhist groups, and one of the first questions they would ask me is, what lineage did I follow, or what lineage was I from, and what was my lineage? And if I didn't answer correctly, they didn't want to talk to me. So thinking that we all get along wonderfully is also kind of a kind of rough kind of thing, and I'll get into that too a little bit later. But being ordained, self-ordained, is not a thing. Okay. Now, there's a really good quote from the teachings of the Buddha. It's from the Appamadavagga. Okay, this will be chapter 2, page 32. The Dhammapada by Narada. Okay, this is where this is from, page 32. A fully ordained disciple of the Buddha is called a bhikkhu. Mendicant monk, or mendicant means basically a beggar or one that lives on their own, is one that lives off alms, similar to a bhikkhu anyway. It may be suggested as the closest equivalent to a bhikkhu. He is not a priest, so he is no mediator between God and man. He has no vows for life, but he is bound by his virtues, or by his rules, which he takes of his own accord. He leads a life of voluntary poverty and celibacy. He is unable to live the holy life. If he is unable to live the holy life, he can discard the robe at any time. Okay, so that's a different thing. You're a mendicant, okay, but that means that basically you're a poor beggar kind of person, and you could be very well educated, but you're not a Buddhist monk. That's just not the way it works. Now, we've had people who claimed they were monks show up at the temple, And usually through a short time, there's a lot of politeness that goes on usually when you get into these cultures, and they'll try and ask some questions, and if something seems a little fishy, they want to know where you're from, who you know. They may even make phone calls or make some, go look you up on the World Wide Web and see who the heck you are. And they may then not want to have you around, or they may be, okay, fine, let's entertain this. But I've seen that happen at least 3 times. I see a lot of people on YouTube, and a lot of not a lot, but a few on YouTube that say that they're self-ordained or as a monk, and I'd love to vet them out and go after this kind of thing, because I think it's something that actually dilutes the teaching. It doesn't help the teaching. It doesn't in any way promote the teaching. So if you want to become ordained, you want to get into Buddhism, get in, go in, jump in, find it, see how the waters are, but be ready to leave. Okay, this is not. It's just like the raft. You don't carry the raft around you when you cross the river, right? You get in the raft, you take it across, you leave it there, or you stand it back for somebody else to leave, or something like that. I mean, you don't carry it around on your head into the forest and in the desert and all that kind of stuff. We just don't need to do that. Okay, and that's the same thing with your practice. If you want to get deep into it, get deep, but don't go telling people that you're ordained when you're not. Go ahead and become a minister. Okay, usually these are people who've already done some education. They may have a master's or a doctorate in divinity and in Buddhist studies or something like that, and they want to work as a chaplain. It's very, very common. I've worked with I was a past president of the International Order of Buddhist Ministers, and that's what we did. We did the ordinations and the process of vetting people out and getting them a little bit more credibility, through actual Buddhist temples. So be careful when you're studying Buddhism. Be careful when you're following a teacher. Use many teachers. Absorb what is useful, as Bruce Lee would say. Use what works for you. In Buddhism also we have the advice to the Kalamas. The advice to the Kalamas is the Kalama Sutra. I'll put a link down in the discussion, I think. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way, so you can see more of this stuff, because I'm going to get on a kind of a roll with these things. This is already 11 minutes, but we'll go further in the next one. Advice to the Kalamas basically says, don't listen to me because I'm dressed up like a monk. Don't listen to me because I show you paperwork. Don't listen to me because it was read, or it was tradition, or it was someone else said, or even by your own mind you say that sounds reasonable. Don't do that. Test everything, and let go of what's not helping you. And look at what's not helping you and go well, you know what, that's not really working for me. I wonder why. And you'll come up with insights, and that's where we get into insight meditation. Anyway, this is Reverend Sean of the Center Path. Don't forget to subscribe. Give me a comment if you know someone who's been self-ordained. I would like to go after that kind of thing, but I'm a little hesitant to, because of some cultural, Buddhist cultural issues, not like Western cultural issues. It's like in Buddhism, you try not to disparage others, and unless you know what the hell you're doing. So I want to make sure that I do my due diligence and my research on people before I pin them, because I've got a big list actually that I could go through. And let me know if you want to hear more about those. And you guys take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.